As Mary said in her welcome words, we're beginning a preaching series called The 10 Enhancements. The 10 Enchantments will come later during the Harry Potter series of cable television. We're doing the 10 Enhancements. And what we're talking about is a series that is basically, what does it mean to become a mature Christian? How do we go deeper spiritually? We all know the 10 Commandments, right? The 10 Commandments are the rules that are the baseline for human interaction and wellness. And boy, if we just followed those, we'd be doing great. And hopefully we are. But as Christians, as people who want to move deeper and deeper into wholeness, even if you're not a Christian, but you want to become more fully human, the 10 enhancements are a way for us to think about what that looks like. What does it look like to be a mature Christian, a follower of God, a deeper person in the being of love and in our higher power? So let's explore that together, starting this week with Radical Sobriety. Radical sobriety is an invitation for us to think about how we are doing, going deeper and deeper into truth and transparency. If you're familiar with AA, you know that the first step of recognizing that you're an addict is admitting, which is a way of telling the truth. I do not have control over this thing. It has control over me. Admitting. And as we grow as human beings, part of the invitation is that we continue to walk into the truth about ourselves, letting the world around us teach us the truth instead of us deciding that the truth is us defining the world around us. So we heard in our 3 readings this morning a part that speaks to this. And the first part I want to point out is Genesis 3. Here we have Adam and Eve, and they just supposedly ate the tree of knowledge, which you'd think would be truth and inform them, and the information gave them an awareness that they're naked, that they're finite, and they're scared, and they hide. When we have those moments in our lives where a new truth comes in, it's a part of our growth to decide how we're going to react. And one of the ways is to avoid it. In AA language, they talk about oblivion, whether we choose it for ourselves or we want to put it on our ignoring of our addiction, this oblivion thing. And they want to just hide from God. They want to blame somebody else. Another favorite of mine personally, I find if something's missing in the fridge, there's like 3 people that immediately come to mind, and none of them are me. Yeah, it's all their fault, right? Blame. Avoid. These are ways that we fail to grow because we don't allow for truth. And then, of course, Jesus gets really annoyed at these religious leaders. And part of that is because they, too, are not looking at the truth. He calls them hypocrites. And those of us who stand in front of other people and claim to have a relationship with God are more accountable for this process of becoming truthful and transparent. And when we don't do it, it's a huge fail, not just for us personally, but for the whole community. And Jesus knew this, and he got really annoyed because these people were pointing out all these superficial things, but they weren't looking at the deep truth of their own corruption. We know how disappointing that is when a leader turns out to be not doing what they profess to do. And Jesus didn't like it. He embodied the fullness of Psalm 15. He embodied truth. Jesus says, I am the truth. See the truth. And that's our invitation as becoming mature people, is to see it. And boy, sometimes it's really hard to see. It's really hard because that means that if I see the truth, if I admit the truth, I'm going to have to change and do some work because I am not following the truth. And as we mature, the next step for us is to me the truth, right? Let that truth inform me. And that's hard. This idea of radical sobriety as we mature and deepen in Christ requires us to feel uneasy and to feel the truth about where we need to grow. Because if we don't see it, we can't do it. So we me it. We me those messages, that realization I'm at, where I know when I'm annoyed and there's something wrong, I find somebody else to blame it on. I just do it. It's like a reaction. And that's a learning, right? And you have one going on in your life right now too. There's something about me that I am realizing is disharmonious with the well-being of the people around me. How am I going to change? That's maturity. And there's something about us that calls us to give ourselves to other people. But when we are called to that, that means more and more we need to be mindful of how we need to grow so we can give well, instead of giving with the expectation of return, or the expectation that, well, I'm doing so much for you, how come you don't change? How come you don't appreciate me? How come you don't X, Y, Z? Our invitation is to live into a maturity that takes us past those expectations and to grow as people who give. So Jesus models this for us. He was the perfect embodiment of me truth. He showed us what this looks like, and the more we live and look in the Gospels, we see that model for ourselves. Jesus was so transparent. His life was an open book. Literally, you could see him at any time of day. He was such an open book, he lived in public. As far as we can tell, during his ministry, he was an outside sleeper. So anybody who knew him would have been able to see him at any time. If they wanted to, they could have camped out with Jesus. That level of transparency is not something I'm calling us to live publicly, but it should be the case that our private life and our public life, as we grow, are more and more the same thing. In fact, I would argue that by the age that most of us in this room are, we should not have a private and public life that has a disconnect in terms of ethics. If it does, we are not mature. We should not have a disconnect in terms of what we say in one place and what we say in another. The jokes we tell over here or the jokes we tell over there. This, for me, has called me to use swear words regularly because I had a place where I used them before. And so if I'm going to use them, I'm going to use them everywhere because I want to have integrity. I don't want to use them one place and not another. I'm probably not going to use any here in the pulpit, and not because of me, but because of people who could be hurt by it, right? But that's another conversation. But for you, what does it mean to be mature? What does it mean for your public and private life to be integrated? Because you are only as sick as your secrets. That's what AA tells us. And those secret things, those things that we would never do, if you wouldn't do it in front of me, why are you doing it? Right? If you wouldn't do it in front of another person that you respect, who you see as a role model, why are you doing it? That is how we grow as Christians. And finally, when we get along that journey and we go deeper and deeper into transparency, letting our lives be open, and that's not saying we don't have boundaries. It means that who I am here is who I am there. You're with me, right? You get that. Okay, so the next thing that happens as we go deeper in is we become the truth. Because that's what Jesus was. He said, I am the truth. And we become the truth. People start to realize, if you see me here and you see me there, it's the same person. It's not like we don't have bad days. But the idea of wholeness is a progression. And the way that we get there is through transparency and truth. And sometimes the most opaque person that I know for myself is myself. Sometimes I don't know how I feel or why I'm doing what I'm doing. But again, spiritual maturity invites us to do the digging, not think, well, I don't know why I did that, and therefore I'm not responsible for it. No, we are responsible for it. We are followers of Jesus Christ who modeled for us the way, the truth, and the life, and we can read about it, and we can see it, and we can hear his words, and let them become a part of us, because when we do this, we become progressively deeper, more embodying the Lord himself, becoming that attractive, sweet person that we are as we walk in God. So it's this progress. We see it. We become it. See me be truth. That progression. The first one's going to be pretty quick. All through our lives, we're going to see it, and then we have to respond to it, right? And so we take me into account after we've seen it. But the be the truth, that is a lifelong journey of being truth to ourselves and others. I read this week something that really worked for me. I mean, it really made sense. Basically, this woman was saying 99% of your life is spent preparing for the 1% of the times when you're going to fail, when you're going to be tempted, when you're not going to be your best selves. And the rest of the time, we're practicing that effort. We're living into who we want to be so that when that time comes, if it's a temptation, if it's an addiction we've gained sobriety from, whatever it is, all of our days are in part about going deeper into God so that we're ready for that 1% of the time when it comes up, when we would fail. So we see the truth, we me the truth, and then we be the truth. The good news, my friend, is as we walk into our deeper maturity, we have a sense of our connection not only to God, but to each other. Because the best way to become connected, to feel that we are a part of one another, is to really know each other, right? And if we hold back, if we're not honest and authentic and an open book, we can't do that for one another. But when we are, we heal together, and we experience community in a profound way. I celebrate that we are a place where this is possible, where our authenticity with one another enables intimacy and growth and support. May all churches be like this. May all people who believe and seek God be like this, because the world is profoundly lonely, and we are learning what it means to be that kind of person that can reach out and embrace. So may we do that this week and celebrate that through Jesus Christ, as at the end of Psalm 15 says, we who follow in the truth shall never be overcome. We will walk in love as Christ loved us, knowing that we are hope bearers in this world.